Raymond, the rumor mill is a buzz about a possible trade happening this week during the draft with the Warriors. No one knows who it's for. It could be for Bradley Beal, could be for Damian Lillard. And maybe nothing can happen and they just attain brand new rookies. This made me think, Raymond, what is the... We tend to here like to focus on our successes, but let's talk about some of our mishaps. What is the worst trade the GoldCast has ever done?
I don't know if I would say this is the worst trade, but this was maybe the worst initial trade that turned out to be a dodged bullet. And that was when we were on the verge at 12:35 midnight of signing Louis B as our third host, which ended up faltering. I think his agent got a little snippy and started to get a little condescending, and negotiation talks fell apart. Typical. And so concluded, what ended up not being the third host of the GoldCast, and then we ended up talking and recruiting Candlestick Will.
You're absolutely right. That was very, very close for us. And we wanted to have kind of an opposite voice in the room, but really having a Rams fan on all year long, it sounds pretty torturous. And you know what? It ended up working for Louis B. He went and he started his own podcast. Louis B is the only Rams fan in the world, cast, and it ended up being really successful. So shout outs to Louis B. But you're right. Worst trade, almost trade decision ever.
This is the GoldCast.
Boom! Welcome to another edition of the GoldCast. We are the voice of the Bay. I'm your host, Rudy Ray, and with me is my brother, my co-host,
Raymond Solis the first, baby. Just one.
Boom! Just one. There's three of me, there's one of you. You're one of a kind. I guess I'm three of a kind?
You're close encounters of the third kind.
Absolutely. That's exactly what I am. Raymond, we are back, and it's time for another pulse-pounding, heart-racing, endorphin-inducing edition of the GoldCast. Okay, Raymond, so kind of picking up where we left off on Thursday, that final game against the Dodgers was absolutely epic. We're not going to spend too much time on it because we've got the Dodgers coming right back into town tomorrow, and that's really where we want to keep our focus. But, Raymond, once again, the Giants down 3-1, 2 outs left in the ninth with everything on the line. They managed to come back. They load the bases on Jansen. They end up pulling the win. We end up with, it goes 5-3 was the final score. And even then, they still had a man on second in the ninth with an attempt for them to try and at least tie the game and go into extra innings. The Giants basically win by the skin of their teeth and take the series 4-1. You were saying on last week's episode that final game, Thursday night, was an absolute must-win. How did you feel once the Giants took the series?
A sigh of relief because, this is the second best team in the NL. And if this trajectory continues through August and September, then it's inevitable. We're on a collision course for October baseball, and you have to build that psychological momentum, that I was talking about in the last episode. You don't want to have the psychological, baseball players are very superstitious, and you don't want to have that superstitious, you don't want to give the superstitious edge to the Dodgers in this case. It doesn't matter if it's, if they were irrelevant and you're just like losing the season series, but they're like a dumpster fire of a team. No, these are the interim champions, and they're obviously playing to get back into October baseball. We have been building this team for several years, and now we are back on the forefront and literally in front of the line, for October baseball. And these are the teams you have to beat. This is just like football. Football, you can't be, you always know who's going to struggle in the playoffs, or at least there's a presumption that they're going to struggle in the NFL playoffs because you have a team that dominated the below 500 teams, but then struggled against all the contenders. The same thing applies for baseball. Even with 162 games, you need to have a above 500 record against those subpar teams, and you need to have a above 500 record against contending teams such as the Dodgers. And they even things up with that win. That is the second 4-game series that they were able to win from the Dodgers, and just in time too. So if they can solidify by playing at home, which they're great at home, they're also good on the road, but if they can solidify this next series against the Dodgers and build momentum instead of having this seesaw battle, then I think that would be really, really good, because the next series is in September, and that, of course, is knocking on the door of October baseball.
Yeah, I was very excited. It was a very dramatic win. And of course, we immediately had to come right back to San Francisco to face the Pirates. The first 2 games, I expected us to lose game 1. I was very disappointed with game 2, and you could kind of see that by Saturday, July 24th, which was game 2, that the exhaustion really had set in. They lost the first game 6-4, the second game 10-2, and didn't really rebound until their final game on Sunday, which they then won 6-1. And you could just that whole stretch, I thought you were going to see the exhaustion in game 1 and then see them bounce back for games 1 and 2. But you could see that they were pretty beat on Friday. Then they just crashed on Saturday, and then Sunday came back alive. I think this one-day rest is important. We have that 3-game series, and here's who we have on the mound, Ray. Let's look forward now to the Dodgers. Here's who we have on the mound tentatively. We've got Webb versus Urias, Del Scafani versus Buehler, and then Cueto versus Price. Oh, that Cueto one I'm really nervous about. They got to be licking their chops seeing
I know.
Cueto.
Cueto is the weak link of this pitching staff, and he once again proved it against the Pirates. Although, he gave up 3 earned runs, and we had 4 runs, so the bullpen gave up those final 2 runs to solidify the win 6-4 on Friday the 23rd. So I don't give Johnny full credit for that loss, although he does get some partial credit for putting us, in that situation to begin with. But I mean, every pitcher is going to give up something. No ace is going to be lights out, a shutout every single game. But Johnny does let up more than our other aces. So it's unfortunate, but hopefully he can get back on the winning track.
Hopefully he does. And I don't mind if we give up Sunday as long as we take give up the game 3 as long as we win the first 2 games. That's what I want to see coming out of the Giants. Can we take the series? Because, to yes, Andrew, about you were talking about with the aces, we were kind of giving Kevin Gausman a hard time for how he played in game 1 against the Dodgers. But then when you see those final 2 games with Jansen, literally no ace has been safe in this series. The Giants and the Dodgers are crushing they're crushing bullpens, they're crushing starting pitchers, they're crushing closing pitchers. This is happening left and right. These teams do not want to lose. They're playing at a really high level, and you have moments of brilliance coming around from both the offense and defense, and then you have moments of intense failure coming from both the offense and defense, and you're really never really sure where it's going to come from, because these players are playing at the highest level that baseball has to offer this year. And so while we are giving their Giants hard times, it's also important to see that it's also happening with the Dodgers. We ate up Urias. We ate up Jansen. We ate those guys up. And these guys have been lights out for the entire season. So, all credit, all due respect, while we do I think sometimes we get more emotional because it's our own team. We get more nervous when it's our guys. If you look across the pond, we're doing the same exact thing to those guys as well.
We are, and it's been a seesaw battle all season long, and I just kind of want to see somebody break it, and obviously I want to see the Giants do that, and I think they have a really good opportunity coming off the big win, salvaging dignity on the series loss to the Pirates and defending home against the second best team in the NL. So, I mean, the stage is set. Now it's time to just respond.
Yeah. Now it is just time for to respond, and I believe that the San Francisco Giants will do it. I am greatly, greatly looking forward to this next series, and hopefully it has... I mean, it doesn't have to be quite as dramatic. That last one was almost taking years off my life. It was getting pretty close there. It was so intense. But hopefully what we get to see is more domination coming from the San Francisco Giants and hopefully grabbing and taking a hold of this series, because it seems like every time one team looks like they have the edge, the very next series, the other team comes right back and steals that momentum away from them. But I agree with you. Obviously, we want to see the Giants carry forward and keep this dominance for this series and the next one in September. All right, Raymond, moving on. Some interesting words from Bob Myers. Also, let me do this impersonation. I want to do this impersonation. So when you look at Bob Myers' picture right now behind me, I feel like someone's going, Raymond, like you ask a question.
Mr. Bob Myers.
I'm Bob Myers. That's what I feel like is the face that he's making right now.
I'm Bob Myers, not Jerry West.
Ouch. We're in a weird place with the Golden State Warriors. You know, we have this 7th pick of the draft. We have this 14th pick of the draft. We have possible tradable assets in Andrew Wiggins and James Wiseman. And the question on everyone's mind is, what exactly are the Warriors going to do? How is this going to go? Are we going to trade for, there was talk about, this week it's been talk about Bradley Beal. 2 weeks ago, it was talk of Damian Lillard. What exactly are the Warriors going to do? The draft is now several days away, and here is what was asked of today, Bob Myers, during his press conference today. They asked him, you know, anything can obviously happen given that at this point it's reported likely that you're going to use both the 7 and 14 and you're not going to trade them. Would you say that's the way it looks right now? You're going to use both picks, basically, in question, are we going to keep these picks or are we going to trade them? Bob Myers says, as of, what time is it? 2 o'clock today? Yeah, but here's the problem with that answer. At 2:45, that can change, or 3:15. And before you jumped on, there's never been, and the league's never operated closer to the deadline than it does now, and things have never happened faster. I mean, today I got some trade stuff that it's Monday, the draft is 3 days away, that had never been discussed. But I knew, I can blame myself too, in the GM community, we kind of squeezed all this action the last 2 days, and maybe it's the concept of, I'm not going to get a real offer unless it's close to the draft. But today, right now, yeah, we're drafting 7-14. Don't get mad if we don't in 3 days, because that means something changed. But right now, yeah, it looks like we're going to draft. And then he also goes on to basically mention, and I'm just going to paraphrase all of this section, but he basically said that there are trades on the table that other teams have said, look, if so-and-so is on the board at 7 and at 4 or at 14, we're willing to make this trade. He even said at other points in the press conference that there were different possible scenarios in the past where lots of players wanted to come and play for them. The question is, are we going to have that same level of interest now that Klay's coming back? Steph with the performance he did last year. It's all up in the air right now, and there is I'm going to say this, and then I'm going to pass the mic to you. There's a level of trepidation and maybe even apprehension and maybe even call it nervousness that I'm getting off of Bob Myers that makes me very nervous. And we've talked about this before. We love what Bob Myers has done in the past, but it does seem like, as we've said, since Jerry West has left, that front office, there's a confidence, there's an ability to evaluate players that is obviously gone. You're dealing with the logo. You're dealing with one of the greatest evaluators, arguably the greatest evaluator in basketball history. And since he has left, this team, I felt, has really struggled to find an identity beyond its one superstar and then the return of its second superstar, Klay. Raymond, where do you stand on Bob Myers' press conference responses today about how they want to handle the draft and this trade deadline?
I think the answer for me, which I have a hunch that perhaps Candlestick might agree with me. I'm not sure, but it's kind of like I'll believe it when I see it. Because Bob Myers, like we said, he has not. They have not necessarily this year. They actually pulled some players together that seemed to be. I thought the Wiggins grab was great. Oubre was great on paper, struggled to get going. Once he did get going, he flashed quite a bit, but then he floundered at the end with injury. However, that's out of his hands. I don't blame him for that. But those were two acquisitions we got this year, as well as the other, players that have contributed throughout the season. And Toscano Anderson, obviously, I enjoyed watching him play as well. But I'm just kind of a wait and see. Like, I'll believe it when I see it. I haven't seen you make a viable blockbuster move yet since Jerry West left. So the day that star walks in the door because you trade these 2 picks, or you trade 2 picks plus one of our role players or a couple of our role players or one of our, lesser stars for one bigger star or something like that, I'll believe it when I see it. So right now, I'm not really confident. I'm sure they're thinking about it. I'm sure they're making calls. I think they're leaning that way because they want a star versus, trying to develop one, because it takes longer to do that versus getting a star ready to go, a turnkey star. So obviously they want that because they want to win a championship within the prime, the dwindling prime window that is Draymond, Curry, and Clay, especially Clay, because his window got shortened dramatically the past 2 seasons for obvious reasons. So they're obviously shooting for that. The question is, will he actually pull it off? I have my doubts based on his track record, but I suppose anything is possible between now and draft.
As you can see behind me, Bob does not like your take. He's very upset. He's looking at you. He's like, "Oh, is that right, Raymond? Oh, is that what you think over there?"
Prove me wrong.
I will say this. I think there's also a second part to this. Obviously, Bob Myers had said that a lot of players were interested in coming to the Warriors, and that basically all dissipated the second Clay went down. I think also on top of that, I think it is very unfair. There was like a trepidation. No one wanted to go to the Warriors now that because KD went. No other superstar wanted to go because it wasn't cool to go to the Warriors. And I think that what Steph did this year was he made it cool again. I think seeing the way, and what I mean by that is the way you saw players like LeBron James and other big superstars shout out him throughout the season, shout out him at the All-Star game, giving him his props, acknowledging him for the way he's changed the game, for how he's the best shooter in the game. And I think the way that the league rallied around Steph in a way they've never really had before, I think that made us more of an inviting destination again. And I think KD, when he was here and when he left, we were an uninviting destination. However fair that is, there's a lot of these players, they care so much about their brands, they care so much about how they're viewed. And I think the way KD was viewed after joining the Warriors, I think it scared a lot of players off. And I think other players were afraid of being kind of put in this same category and going under this much of a microscope for joining this team. I think that's completely unfair. I think it's ridiculous. I've talked about this a million times. We can do everything right. We can build our team through the draft, make all the right moves, and then we get the best player available, and we're completely lambasted for it. Yet the Lakers can be completely inept for a decade and decide that, and since Bron wants to make Space Jam 2, then they get Bron, he wants AD, they get AD, and they can completely amass their team from virtually nothing just because some players want to make movies and produce the next Friday the 13th. And that, to me, I think is 10 times more ridiculous and atrocious than how we acquired KD, which was building our team through the draft. I don't want to hear about, he took his team, blah, 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 blah. He spent 10 years there. Get over it. He did the best he could. An employee should be allowed to leave the company they're at after 10 years to join a superior company because they want to get superior results for their career. I think it's that simple, and I don't know how we totally got off subject, but I just get so frustrated when I talk about this because I don't think we did anything wrong. But I do think, going back to this, I think the Warriors are a viable destination again, a desirable destination again. The question is, can Bob, can he bank on that? Can he close the deal on that? It's a wait and see.
It is a wait and see. And, if there is a silver lining to the LeBron's thing over there in LA, it's the fact that Space Jam 2 was a critical failure. I mean, thank God for that.
Yeah, because then we'd have gotten a Space Jam 3, a Space Jam 4. I didn't see it. Did you see it?
I think I had more important things to do with my life.
Like watch the skateboarding in the Olympics?
Yes, actually, yes.
Yeah, and actually, we are actually going to talk a little bit about that next week. Raymond is a lifelong skateboarder. We have a variety of friends that have gone pro. I used to skateboard before I used to breakdance. We are going to be talking about skateboarding in the Olympics, which is a little bit off of our typical brand, but we're just so excited. We have to touch on it, but we're going to wait for all of the games to end before discussing skateboarding being the Olympics. But it's been a pretty badass to watch.
Oh yeah, very exciting. This past weekend was pretty awesome, and we'll share a little bit of thoughts on that just for fun.
Yep,
because it was fun. Having new games in the Olympics is always fun, especially if it. I mean, they have skiing and shooting for God's sake, so it's nice to have some more traditional sports in the mix now with some really pretty interesting ones in the pipeline for next Olympics.
Absolutely. All right. Well. What say you, GoldCast Nation? What is going to happen in the next 72 hours? Are we going to have rookies on the team? Are we going to have Bradley Beal on the team? Is Damian Lillard going to be on the team? What say you? Let us know in the comments. Go to youtube.com/thegoldcast. And if you're watching this video, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And so concludes another edition of the GoldCast. We are the voice of the Bay. I'm your host, Rudy Solis III, and with me is my brother, my co-host,
Raymond Solis first, baby.
Boom! We'll see you next time. Same GoldCast time, same GoldCast channel.